A curious boy, exploring behind the scenes of a horse race, finds a dejected horse. Upon approaching, he uncovers a dark secret involving the animal in critical condition. Devastated, he tells his father, but is shocked to be treated as a liar, for a reason no one could imagine. Determined to uncover the truth, they investigate further, and a horrifying revelation chills the father to the bone. The sun beats down on the bustling fairgrounds of Lexington, Kentucky, as the annual Bluegrass Stakes race day unfolds. The air is thick with excitement, filled with the mingling scents of popcorn, hay, and leather. Crowds of spectators dressed in their Sunday best mill about the grandstands, their chatter punctuated by the occasional whinny of a horse. Amidst this controlled chaos, we find young Tommy, a curious 10-year-old with tousled blonde hair and bright blue eyes that sparkle with adventure. His small frame weaves through the legs of adults, drawn inexorably towards the forbidden allure of the stables. Tommy's father, Jack, a former jockey turned respected horse trainer, is busy near the paddocks, deep in conversation with other racing professionals. The stables loom before Tommy, their weathered wooden doors slightly ajar, beckoning him into a world of equine secrets. The boy glances over his shoulder, making sure his father is still occupied, before slipping inside. The sudden quiet envelops him, broken only by the soft nickering of horses and the rustle of straw beneath his feet. As Tommy's eyes adjust to the dim light, he notices something unusual. In the far corner, away from the other horses, stands a magnificent bay stallion. Its coat, which should gleam with health, appears dull and unkempt. The horse's head hangs low, its eyes lacking the fire Tommy has come to expect in racehorses. A nameplate on the stall door reads Thunderbolt, but the animal before him seems a far cry from anything fast or powerful. Concern floods Tommy's young heart as he approaches the dejected-looking horse. Something is clearly amiss, and he knows he must act. But in a world where adults make the rules, will anyone listen to a child's worried voice? Tommy Barnes, our young protagonist, is a bundle of curiosity and compassion. At just 10 years old, he possesses an innate understanding of horses that surpasses many adults. His bright blue eyes, always wide with wonder, miss nothing when it comes to equine behavior. Tommy's small stature belies his big heart, especially when it comes to animals in need. Jack Barnes, Tommy's father, stands tall and lean, his weathered face a testament to years spent under the Kentucky sun. Once a celebrated jockey, Jack now channels his expertise into training horses. His calloused hands and the slight bow in his legs speak of countless hours in the saddle. Despite his tough exterior, Jack's eyes soften when they land on his son, revealing a deep, if sometimes awkward, affection. Thunderbolt, the majestic bay stallion, bears the marks of both greatness and neglect. His muscular frame suggests a champion's pedigree, but his dull coat and listless demeanor hint at hidden troubles. There's an intelligence in his dark eyes that seems to plead for help, forming an instant connection with young Tommy. Mark Williams, Thunderbolt's owner, cuts an imposing figure in his tailored suit and Stetson hat. His booming laugh and firm handshakes mask a shrewd businessman who views horses more as investments than living beings. Mark's friendship with Jack spans decades, built on shared victories and a mutual love for the sport, or so Jack believes. Sarah Barnes, Tommy's mother, is a pillar of strength for her family. Her auburn hair is often tied back in a practical ponytail, and her warm brown eyes radiate kindness. As a local veterinarian, Sarah's gentle yet firm demeanor has earned her the trust of both animals and their owners. Her absence at the racetrack today, due to an emergency at her clinic, weighs heavily on Tommy, who often relies on her as a confidant. Officer Emily Johnson, a recent addition to the Lexington Police Department, patrols the outskirts of the racetrack. Her crisp uniform and attentive gaze reflect her dedication to her job. At 28, Emily is driven by a strong sense of justice and a particular soft spot for animal welfare cases. Old Joe, the seasoned stable hand, moves with a slight limp, a remnant from years of working with unpredictable young horses. His leathery face, creased with laugh lines and wisdom, hides beneath a worn baseball cap. Joe's quiet presence and vast knowledge make him a respected figure among the stables, though his loyalty to his employers sometimes conflicts with his love for the horses. The spirit of Lexington itself seems to be a character in this tale. The city's rich equestrian heritage is palpable in the air. From the rolling bluegrass hills to the white-fenced paddocks, it's a place where tradition and progress often clash, where the glamour of race day contrasts sharply with the hard work that happens behind the scenes. As Tommy stands before Thunderbolt's stall, his young heart racing with concern, he notices something that makes his blood run cold. Just visible beneath the horse's unkempt coat are angry red marks, unmistakable signs of mistreatment. Thunderbolt's eyes, once full of fire, now look at Tommy with a mixture of fear and resignation. Torn between his instinct to help and the knowledge that he shouldn't be in the stables, Tommy makes a split-second decision. He bolts from the stable, his small feet kicking up dust as he races towards the paddocks where he last saw his father. Jack turns, his face a mix of concern and mild annoyance. "Tommy, what's wrong? You know you shouldn't be running around here." The tension in the air is palpable as Jack struggles to process Tommy's alarming revelation. His eyes dart between his son's earnest face and Mark's increasingly defensive posture. Jack's mind races, memories of his long friendship with Mark clashing against the unwavering trust he has in his son's integrity. "Now hold on a minute," Mark interjects, his voice strained with forced casualness. "Kids have wild imaginations, Jack. I'm sure it's nothing." He places a hand on Jack's shoulder, a gesture that once conveyed camaraderie, but now feels heavy with unspoken pressure. Jack kneels down to his son's level, his weathered hands gently gripping Tommy's shoulders. "Tommy, that's a serious accusation. Are you absolutely sure about what you saw?" As Jack searches his son's face, he sees not just conviction, but a reflection of his own values, the importance of standing up for those who can't defend themselves. It's a principle he's always tried to instill in Tommy, and now, faced with this test, he realizes the weight of his next actions. Jack stands slowly, torn between loyalty to an old friend and the gnawing doubt sparked by his son's words. He takes a deep breath, knowing his decision will have far-reaching consequences. "I think we need to take a look, Mark, just to be sure." As the trio makes their way towards the stables, the atmosphere grows increasingly tense. Tommy leads the way, his small frame propelled by a mixture of determination and worry. Jack follows closely, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Trust in his son, warring with disbelief that his old friend could be capable of such negligence. Mark trails behind, his earlier bravado replaced by a nervous energy. His eyes dart around as if seeking an escape from the impending confrontation. "This is ridiculous," he mutters, but his protests lack conviction. Upon reaching Thunderbolt's stall, the reality of the situation becomes impossible to ignore. The magnificent stallion stands in the corner, his posture a far cry from the proud bearing of a champion racehorse. As Jack approaches, Thunderbolt flinches, a reaction that sends a chill down the trainer's spine. With gentle hands, Jack begins to examine the horse, his experienced eyes catching details that he wishes he could unsee. The angry marks Tommy mentioned are clearly visible, along with signs of neglect that a casual observer might miss. Each discovery feels like a physical blow to Jack, the evidence mounting against his friend. Tommy watches his father intently, his young face a mixture of vindication and sorrow. He reaches out to stroke Thunderbolt's nose, and the horse responds with a soft nicker, as if recognizing a kindred spirit. Jack straightens up, his decision made. With a heavy heart, he turns to Mark, his voice steady but laden with emotion. "This ends now, Mark. We need to call the authorities." Didi. The decision to involve the authorities sets off a chain of events that quickly spiral beyond Jack's control. As Officer Emily Johnson arrives at the scene, The once bustling racetrack becomes a hotbed of whispered conversations and sidelong glances. The blue and red lights of her patrol car cast an eerie glow over the stables, a stark contrast to the festive atmosphere of moments ago. Jack finds himself caught in an impossible situation. On one side stands Mark, his longtime friend and respected colleague in the racing world, now looking defeated and desperate. On the other is Tommy, his son, whose courage and integrity have forced this moment of reckoning. The weight of his responsibility to the horses, to the sport he loves, and to his own moral compass feels overwhelming. Officer Johnson begins her investigation, her crisp professionalism a counterpoint to the emotional turmoil surrounding her. As she documents Thunderbolt's condition and takes statements, Jack can't help but notice the mix of approval and accusation in the eyes of other trainers and stable hands who have gathered to watch. Old Joe, the seasoned stable hand, approaches Jack with a pained expression. "I've seen things, Mr. Barnes," he admits in a low voice. "Should have said something sooner, I suppose, but in this business—" He trails off, the unspoken rules of loyalty hanging heavy in the air. The challenge of navigating this ethical minefield is compounded by the practical implications. As news of the investigation spreads, Jack realizes that this incident could have far-reaching consequences for the entire racing community in Lexington. Sponsors might pull out, reputations could be tarnished, and the livelihoods of many innocent parties might be affected. Tommy, sensing his father's distress, slips his small hand into Jack's. "Did I do the right thing, Dad?" he asks, his voice small but steady. As the initial shock wears off, new challenges emerge. Mark, now facing serious legal troubles, begins to lash out, threatening to drag others down with him. "You think you're so righteous, Jack?" he snarls. "I've got dirt on half the trainers here. If I'm going down, I'm not going alone." Moreover, as Thunderbolt is led away for veterinary care, Jack is confronted with another heart-wrenching dilemma. The horse, clearly traumatized, seems to have formed a bond with Tommy. The prospect of separating them, even for the animal's well-being, promises to be yet another emotional hurdle. As the investigation unfolds, Jack finds himself thrust into the center of a growing controversy. The local media, always hungry for a scandal, descends upon the racetrack. Reporters thrust microphones in Jack's face, demanding comments on the shocking abuse allegations rocking the racing world. Their presence adds another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. Sarah Barnes, alerted by a flurry of text messages, arrives at the track, her veterinary expertise now crucial. As she examines Thunderbolt, her face grows increasingly grim. "This isn't just recent mistreatment, Jack," she says softly. "This horse has been suffering for some time. How did nobody notice?" Her words cut deep, forcing Jack to confront his own role in this situation. Had he been too trusting, too willing to look the other way? The realization that he might have inadvertently allowed this abuse to continue weighs heavily on his conscience. Meanwhile, Tommy faces his own set of challenges. Word spreads quickly among the other children at the track, and he finds himself alternately praised as a hero and ostracized as a tattletale. The complexity of adult morality crashes against his youthful idealism, leaving him confused and conflicted. The racing community begins to fracture under the strain. Some rally around Jack, praising his integrity, while others distance themselves, fearing association with the scandal. Long-standing friendships are tested as people are forced to take sides. Jack overhears heated arguments about loyalty versus ethics, tradition versus progress. Officer Johnson, sensing the wider implications of the case, brings in additional resources. The involvement of animal welfare organizations adds yet another dimension to the situation. Their presence, while necessary, further inflames tensions among the racing professionals who feel their entire way of life is under attack. As evening approaches, Jack faces perhaps his most daunting challenge yet. He must explain the day's events to the race organizers and deal with the immediate consequences. The Bluegrass Stakes, a cornerstone of Lexington's racing calendar, is now shrouded in controversy. Decisions about whether to proceed with the race and how to address the public loom large. Through it all, Thunderbolt's fate remains uncertain. The horse's ownership is in question, his health is precarious, and his future in racing is doubtful. Jack knows that whatever happens next will require difficult decisions and likely more personal and professional sacrifice. As the day draws to a close, Jack stands at the center of a maelstrom of ethical dilemmas, legal challenges, and emotional turmoil. He realizes that the path forward is far from clear, and that every choice he makes will have far-reaching consequences for himself, his family, his community, and the world of horse racing he holds dear. Breel. As the gravity of the situation settles in, Jack springs into action, his years of experience in the racing world guiding his decisions. His first priority is Thunderbolt's well-being. He works closely with Sarah, coordinating with local animal welfare organizations to ensure the horse receives the best possible care. Jack's reputation in the community proves invaluable as he rallies support from trusted veterinarians and equine specialists. Tommy, inspired by his father's decisive actions, takes it upon himself to comfort Thunderbolt. With Sarah's guidance, he learns how to approach the traumatized horse, speaking in soft tones and offering gentle strokes. This interaction not only helps Thunderbolt, but also gives Tommy a sense of purpose amidst the chaos. Officer Johnson, recognizing the complexity of the case, brings in a specialized task force to investigate potential widespread abuse in the racing circuit. Her methodical approach provides a sense of order to the tumultuous situation. She interviews staff members, reviews veterinary records, and meticulously documents all findings. Mark, facing the consequences of his actions, reacts with a mixture of defiance and desperation. He attempts to rally supporters, spinning a narrative of persecution and misunderstanding. However, as evidence mounts against him, his allies begin to distance themselves, leaving him increasingly isolated. The racing community's reaction is split. Some trainers and owners, fearing scrutiny, close ranks and become defensive. Others, seeing an opportunity for long overdue reform, step forward with their own stories and evidence of malpractice. This divide creates a tense atmosphere at the track, with heated debates erupting in every corner. Media coverage intensifies, forcing Jack to become an impromptu spokesperson for ethical treatment in horse racing. Initially uncomfortable in this role, he finds his voice, speaking passionately about the need for change and stricter oversight in the sport he loves. As the investigation deepens, Sarah takes a proactive stance in addressing the medical needs of not just Thunderbolt, but other horses at the track. She organizes a team of volunteer veterinarians to conduct thorough health checks, uncovering several other cases of neglect, though none as severe as Thunderbolt's. Her actions spark a movement for better health monitoring in the racing industry. Tommy, processing the events in his own way, begins to sketch. His drawings of Thunderbolt and other horses capture the animal's emotions in a way that touches everyone who sees them. When a local newspaper features one of his sketches, it becomes a powerful symbol of the need for change, resonating with the public far beyond Lexington. Jack, balancing his roles as a father, trainer, and now reluctant activist, makes a difficult decision. He announces that he will withdraw all his horses from upcoming races until a comprehensive review of animal welfare practices is conducted. This bold move sends shockwaves through the racing world, inspiring other trainers to follow suit. The race organizers, facing mounting pressure, react by postponing the Bluegrass Stakes. They announce the formation of an independent committee to review and overhaul animal welfare regulations. This decision, while controversial, is largely seen as a step in the right direction. Old Joe, feeling guilty about his previous silence, becomes an unexpected ally. He starts sharing his decades of observations, providing crucial information that helps identify other potential cases of abuse. His actions inspire other stable hands to come forward, creating a ripple effect of transparency. Officer Johnson, recognizing the case's potential to set a precedent, works tirelessly to build a robust legal case. She collaborates with animal rights lawyers to ensure that the charges against Mark and any other implicated parties are comprehensive and legally sound. As news of the Lexington case spreads, it triggers reactions across the country. Other racing communities begin internal reviews, and there are calls for national legislation to protect racehorses. The story evolves from a local incident to a catalyst for industry-wide reform. Throughout these tumultuous days, the bond between Jack and Tommy grows stronger. Their shared commitment to doing what's right, despite the personal cost, reinforces their relationship and sets a powerful example for others in the community. The day of the rescheduled Bluegrass Stakes dawns with an air of uncertainty and anticipation. The usually festive atmosphere is replaced by a palpable tension as protesters and supporters gather outside the track. Media vans line the streets, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like metal trees. Inside the track, Jack finds himself at the epicenter of a storm. He's been asked to testify before the newly formed Committee on Animal Welfare, their findings set to be announced just hours before the race. The stakes are higher than any race he's ever participated in. The future of the sport hangs in the balance. As Jack prepares to give his testimony, he's confronted by a group of fellow trainers. Some offer support, but others accuse him of betraying the racing community. "You're destroying our livelihoods, Barnes," one shouts, his face red with anger. The confrontation nearly turns physical before security intervenes. Meanwhile, Tommy, determined to stay close to Thunderbolt, sneaks into the stables. He finds the horse agitated, picking up on the tension surrounding the track. As he tries to calm Thunderbolt, he overhears a heated conversation in the next stall. Two stable hands are discussing plans to take care of the problem horse before the committee can examine him. Tommy realizes with horror that they're talking about Thunderbolt. Panic-stricken, Tommy tries to lead Thunderbolt out of the stables, but the horse, still traumatized, refuses to budge. The voices grow closer, and Tommy, his heart pounding, hides in Thunderbolt's stall, desperately trying to think of a way to save his equine friend. At the same time, Sarah receives an anonymous tip about falsified veterinary records. As she digs deeper, she uncovers a complex web of deceit involving several high-profile trainers and owners. The implications are staggering, potentially implicating some of the most respected names in the industry. Officer Johnson, acting on Sarah's information, initiates a series of raids on offices and private residences. As evidence is seized and arrests are made, the racing world is thrown into chaos. News of the raids reaches the track, causing a near riot as accusations and denials fly. Jack, unaware of the unfolding drama with Tommy and Thunderbolt, takes the stand before the committee. As he begins to speak, he notices Mark being escorted into the room by police officers. Their eyes meet, and Jack sees a mix of defeat, anger, and something else, a silent plea. As Jack testifies about the need for reform and stricter oversight, he's hit with a barrage of questions. Some committee members are sympathetic, while others seem determined to discredit him. The pressure mounts as Jack realizes that his words could either save or condemn the sport he loves. Suddenly, a commotion erupts outside the hearing room. Security guards burst in, whispering urgently to Officer Johnson. Her face pales as she turns to Jack. "Mr. Barnes," she says, her voice tight with concern, "there's a situation with your son and Thunderbolt. We need you immediately." Jack's world narrows to a pinpoint as he rushes from the hearing room, his testimony forgotten in the face of this new crisis. He races towards the stables, his mind conjuring worst-case scenarios with every step. The once familiar path seems endless, the sounds of the agitated crowd fading into white noise. As he approaches the stables, Jack sees a gathering of security personnel and police officers. Sarah is there, her face etched with worry. Tommy's inside with Thunderbolt, she explains quickly. 2 men were planning to hurt the horse. Tommy overheard them and tried to intervene. Inside the stable, the situation is volatile. Tommy, tears streaming down his face, stands defiantly in front of Thunderbolt's stall. The 2 stable hands, now identified as associates of Mark, are trying to reason with the boy, their voices a mixture of persuasion and threat. Jack enters the scene, his heart in his throat. "Tommy!" he calls out, relief and fear mingling in his voice. Chaos erupts as Thunderbolt bolts from the stall, eyes wild with fear. He charges down the stable aisle, people diving out of his way. Tommy, acting on instinct, runs after the horse, calling out to him. Outside, the situation quickly escalates. Thunderbolt, in his panic, crashes through the police barricade, sending officers and bystanders scattering. He gallops towards the racetrack, Tommy in pursuit, with Jack and a growing crowd not far behind. Thunderbolt, confused and frightened, begins to run along the track. Tommy, showing a courage beyond his years, continues to chase after him, calling out soothing words. Jack, his heart pounding, realizes the danger his son is in, but also understands that Tommy might be Thunderbolt's only hope for calming down. The entire racetrack holds its breath as this impromptu and potentially deadly race unfolds. Jack, pushing his body to its limit, finally manages to catch up to Tommy, but before he can grab his son, Tommy does something unexpected. As Tommy stands firm on the track, his voice somehow reaching Thunderbolt through the chaos, something extraordinary happens. The powerful horse, mere feet away from the boy, begins to slow. His gallop becomes a trot, then a walk, until finally he stops altogether, mere inches from Tommy. The entire racetrack falls into an eerie silence, the only sound, the heavy breathing of horse and boy. Tommy slowly raises his hand, and to everyone's amazement, Thunderbolt lowers his head, allowing the child to stroke his muzzle gently. This moment of connection between a frightened animal and a brave child becomes a powerful symbol, captured by dozens of cameras and instantly broadcasted across the nation. It's a vivid illustration of the bond between humans and horses, highlighting the trust and compassion at the heart of their relationship. As Jack reaches his son, pulling him into a tight embrace, a revelation unfolds. Mark, who had been watching the scene unfold, breaks free from the officers holding him and rushes onto the track. But instead of trying to escape, he falls to his knees beside Thunderbolt, tears streaming down his face. In a shocking twist, Mark begins to confess, not just to his treatment of Thunderbolt, but to a larger, more insidious problem plaguing the racing world. He reveals a widespread conspiracy of doping, abuse, and cover-ups involving some of the most prominent names in the industry. As Mark's confession unfolds, the implications send shockwaves through the assembled crowd. Gasps and murmurs ripple through the spectators, committee members, and fellow trainers. The scandal, it seems, goes far deeper than anyone had imagined. As Mark's confession continues, a startling truth emerges. The abuse and neglect weren't just the actions of a few bad actors, but symptoms of an industry-wide problem rooted in greed and the relentless pursuit of victory at any cost. Mark reveals a complex network of trainers, owners, and even veterinarians who had been complicit in pushing horses beyond their limits, often with devastating consequences. "We've been living in denial," Mark says, his voice heavy with remorse. "We told ourselves it was for the good of the sport, but we were wrong, so wrong." Udili. But amidst this dark revelation, a spark of hope emerges. Inspired by Tommy's bravery and the powerful image of his connection with Thunderbolt, people begin to step forward. Stable hands, jockeys, and even some trainers start sharing their own stories, filling in the gaps of Mark's confession and providing crucial evidence. Officer Johnson, recognizing the magnitude of the situation, quickly organizes a task force to handle the influx of information. The investigation that had started with one horse and one boy now expands into a comprehensive review of the entire industry. As the truth unfolds, Jack finds himself at a crossroads. He realizes that he, too, had been blind to some of the abuses happening around him. In a moment of clarity, he steps forward, addressing the stunned crowd and the cameras broadcasting the event nationwide. Today we've seen the worst of our sport, Jack begins, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. But we've also seen the best of humanity in my son's courage and compassion. It's time for us to follow Tommy's example. It's time for honesty, for change, and for remembering why we fell in love with these magnificent animals in the first place. His words resonate across the racetrack and beyond, marking a turning point not just for the Bluegrass Stakes, but for the entire world of horse racing. As the sun begins to set on this tumultuous day, there's a sense that while one chapter is ending, another, more hopeful one is just beginning. In the days following the dramatic events at the Bluegrass Stakes, a wave of change sweeps through the horse racing industry. The committee, armed with Mark's confession and the flood of new evidence, works tirelessly to implement comprehensive reforms. Jack, leveraging his reputation and newfound platform, becomes a leading voice in the push for change. He works closely with animal welfare organizations, veterinarians, and progressive members of the racing community to develop new standards for horse care and training. One of the first major changes is the implementation of a more rigorous and transparent health monitoring system for all racehorses. Regular checkups, conducted by independent veterinarians, become mandatory. The results are made public, ensuring accountability and allowing fans to follow the well-being of their favorite horses. Tommy's role in uncovering the scandal turns him into an unexpected symbol of hope and change. His connection with Thunderbolt inspires a new youth program that focuses on teaching children about ethical horse care and the importance of empathy in animal sports. Thunderbolt, now under the care of Jack and his family, begins a remarkable recovery. His progress becomes a testament to the power of proper care and compassion. As he regains his strength and spirit, plans are made not for his return to racing, but for him to become an ambassador for retired racehorses, helping to educate the public about life after the track. The legal ramifications of the scandal unfold swiftly. Mark, along with several other key figures implicated in the abuse, face criminal charges. However, in light of his cooperation and genuine remorse, Mark is offered a plea deal that includes community service, working with horse rehabilitation programs. Officer Johnson's task force expands its investigation nationwide, uncovering similar issues at tracks across the country. This leads to a series of high-profile arrests and a complete overhaul of the regulatory bodies governing horse racing. Jack, in a bold move, establishes a foundation dedicated to the welfare of retired racehorses. Using his connections and the publicity from the scandal, he secures funding to create a network of sanctuaries where former racehorses can live out their days in comfort and dignity. The Bluegrass Stakes, once synonymous with the old guard of racing, is reimagined as a showcase for ethical horse racing practices. The event is expanded to include exhibitions on horse care, educational programs for aspiring trainers, and a celebration of the bond between humans and horses. As these changes take root, there's a palpable shift in the atmosphere at racetracks across the country. The focus moves from merely winning at all costs to celebrating the beauty, athleticism, and well-being of the horses. Races become not just sporting events, but demonstrations of ethical animal partnership. Throughout this period of transformation, Tommy continues to visit Thunderbolt regularly, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Their story, captured in books and documentaries, becomes a powerful narrative driving home the importance of compassion and integrity in the world of horse racing. The aftermath of the Bluegrass Stakes scandal leaves a profound emotional impact on all those involved, rippling out to touch the broader racing community and beyond. For Jack, the experience is transformative. The guilt he initially felt for not recognizing the abuse sooner gives way to a sense of purpose. He finds a new calling in advocating for animal welfare, his passion for racing rekindled by the promise of a more ethical future for the sport he loves. Tommy's journey is one of empowerment and growth. His courage in standing up for Thunderbolt not only saves the horse, but also ignites a spark of change in the entire industry. The experience teaches him valuable lessons about the power of compassion and the importance of speaking up for those who cannot speak for themselves. His bond with Thunderbolt continues to deepen, serving as a living example of the profound connection possible between humans and animals. Sarah, combining her veterinary expertise with her newfound role in the reform movement, experiences a professional renaissance. Her work in developing new standards for equine care brings her a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. The respect she gains in the industry allows her to mentor a new generation of veterinarians committed to ethical practices. For Thunderbolt, the emotional journey is perhaps the most dramatic. From a neglected and abused racehorse to a symbol of hope and resilience, his transformation is a testament to the healing power of love and proper care. His growing trust in humans, particularly Tommy and the Barnes family, is a poignant reminder of animals' capacity for forgiveness and renewal. The emotional ripples of the scandal and subsequent reforms extend far beyond the Barnes family. Mark, despite facing legal consequences, finds an unexpected path to redemption. His work in horse rehabilitation programs as part of his community service brings him face to face with the impact of his past actions. This experience leads to a profound personal transformation, as he dedicates himself to making amends and becoming an advocate for the very changes he once resisted. Officer Johnson, while proud of her role in uncovering the truth, grapples with the sheer scale of the abuse that had gone undetected for so long. Her determination to see justice served is tempered by a growing understanding of the complex factors that led to the scandal. This nuanced perspective informs her approach to implementing and enforcing the new regulations, balancing firmness with compassion. The broader racing community experiences a collective emotional journey. Initial shock and denial give way to soul-searching and, ultimately, a renewed commitment to the sport's noble traditions. Many in the industry find a sense of relief in finally confronting long-ignored issues, leading to a more open and supportive community. Truly, for the public, the story of Tommy and Thunderbolt becomes a source of inspiration. It resonates particularly strongly with young people, sparking a new generation's interest in ethical animal care and conservation. Schools begin incorporating the story into their curricula, teaching valuable lessons about courage, compassion, and the responsibility humans have towards animals. The emotional impact extends to the horses themselves. As the new welfare standards are implemented, there's a noticeable change in the demeanor of racehorses across the country. They appear more relaxed, healthier, and even seem to perform better, reinforcing the idea that ethical treatment and athletic excellence go hand in hand. Perhaps most poignantly, the relationship between Tommy and Thunderbolt continues to evolve. Their bond becomes a living symbol of healing and trust, inspiring everyone who witnesses it. Tommy's gentle approach to Thunderbolt and the horse's evident trust and affection in return serve as a powerful, ongoing reminder of the transformative power of kindness and understanding. 1 year after the events that shook the racing world, the reformed Bluegrass Stakes stands as a testament to the positive changes that have swept through the industry. The grandstands are packed, not just with racing enthusiasts, but with families and animal lovers drawn by the event's new focus on ethical horsemanship and education. As the sun sets on the track, casting a golden glow across the Kentucky bluegrass, Jack and Tommy stand side by side near the winner's circle. But today, they're not here to celebrate a race victory. Instead, they're preparing to lead Thunderbolt in a special ceremony, celebrating the horse's full recovery and his new role as an ambassador for retired racehorses. Thunderbolt, his coat gleaming and eyes bright with health and contentment, walks proudly beside Tommy. The crowd falls silent as the boy and his horse make their way to the center of the track. Jack steps forward, addressing the assembled spectators, his voice carrying a message of hope and responsibility. "A year ago, we stood at a crossroads," Jack begins. "Today, we celebrate not just Thunderbolt's journey, but the journey of an entire industry towards compassion and ethical treatment of these magnificent animals." Jack concludes his speech with a call to action. Let this be a reminder that when we lead with empathy and courage, we can change not just an industry, but the world. The story of Thunderbolt and Tommy is not just theirs, it's ours. Let's continue to write it together, with compassion as our guide. In the wake of the Bluegrass Stakes scandal, the world of horse racing underwent a profound transformation. What began as one boy's courageous stand for a single horse blossomed into a movement that reshaped an entire industry. The implementation of strict welfare standards, transparent health monitoring, and a renewed focus on the bond between humans and horses marked the dawn of a new era in equestrian sports. Jack Barnes, once a reluctant whistleblower, emerged as a leading voice for reform, his foundation setting new benchmarks for the care of retired racehorses. Tommy's unwavering compassion not only saved Thunderbolt, but inspired a generation to view animals with empathy and respect. The Barnes family's journey from bystanders to change-makers serves as a powerful reminder of the impact one family can have when they stand up for what's right. The racing industry, initially rocked by scandal, found renewed purpose and public support through its commitment to ethical practices. Tracks across the nation became not just venues for sport, but centers of education and animal welfare advocacy. 5 years later, Tommy, now a teenager, stands before a class of young equestrians, Thunderbolt by his side. As he shares their story, the gleam in his eye matches the one in Thunderbolt's, a testament to the enduring bond between a boy and his horse, and a living example of the positive change they inspired in the world of horse racing. The story of Tommy and Thunderbolt reminds us that compassion has the power to transform lives and industries. As viewers, we're called to carry this message forward. Whether it's speaking up against injustice, showing kindness to animals, or supporting ethical practices in sports and beyond, each of us has the power to make a difference. Let their story inspire your own journey of courage and compassion.